Thank you for checking out this episode of Wiregrass Daily News Sports. You can find the podcast over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you just leave 4 stars, you are just a straight up hater. You can follow me on social media over at pjordansec. You can email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. All right, everybody, welcome in to another edition of Wiregrass Daily News Sports. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer for Nothing Was Football on 96.9 The Legend and Auburn writer for Last Word on College Football. And first up with me today, we're previewing the Iron Bowl. We're going to get the Auburn side of things first, the home team. And joining me to do that is Taylor Jones. He is the managing editor over there at the Auburn Wire. And Taylor, appreciate you coming on to talk about the Auburn side of the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you again. Phillip, got a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, not all of it's great, but I know it's always an honor to talk with you and looking forward to seeing what we all get into today.
Yes, when I asked you a week ago to come on to do this, I was like everybody, assumed okay, Auburn will take care of business against New Mexico State. They will be 7-4, 4 straight wins, going to the Iron Bowl. A lot of confidence, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm will be going into this game on the Auburn side. But that did not happen because Auburn stumped their toe on Saturday, big time. This is one that stump your toes in the middle of the night. You don't see something in the floor, you hit it, and you probably say some words you probably shouldn't say. But they lose to New Mexico State 31-10. New Mexico State dominated Auburn. I mean, this is not a fluke victory by New Mexico State, but just your thoughts. We're doing this on a Monday night after that loss.
I mean, after taking some time to reflect and all that, I mean, it truly is impressive what New Mexico State did in the way that, you and I both cover high school football here in this state outside of doing this. And you talk to a coach the week before the game where you know that they're going to be outmatched. I mean, the team they're going to play has, 10, 12 athletes that are going to outrun them. They're going to be blown out. What's the first thing they always say? Well, we got to win the time of possession battle. They can't win if they can't score. And that's what New Mexico State did. The game lasts 60 seconds or 60 minutes, and they had the ball for 38 and a half of those minutes. And so, I mean, that was impressive in itself, but it's also impressive in the fact that they were able to manage the game the way that they did. Because, going back to the high school thing, it's like, yeah, that's fine if you have good blockers or you have 2 or 3 really good running backs. But other than that, enjoy the extra 2 minutes of possession that you have. But if you're not going to score with it, then it doesn't matter. But Diego Pavia did a great job managing the game, connecting with, I think, 11 different receivers. So he had a lot of playmakers that he could have chosen from. The running game played very well. Not a really good day defensively when you think about it, because I was looking back at PFF and those grades, and the pass rush was the worst that it's been. I think it was maybe the Texas A&M game that it was about the same, but it was worse since then. Shout out to Elijah McAllister for getting the only sack in there. But I mean, just other than that, just a very quiet game from Jalen McLeod, which is something you really can't afford if you're Auburn. Same thing with Keldrick Falk, a guy that's really been an up-and-coming guy, and you're thinking, hey, he may get some SEC Freshman of the Year, maybe some National Freshman of the Year awards, and there was really nothing going for him either. Larry, not really having a big game as well. I think like the top tacklers were the defensive guys, and that's usually not a good sign. It means that you're getting thrown on a lot, and that's exactly what happened. But on the offensive side of the ball, I don't know if the defense just didn't really give them the looks to run the ball more, but I really was disappointed by the lack of carries that Jarquez Hunter got. Mm-hmm. And, again, I don't know if it was, hey, this isn't going to work, we're going to stop this completely. But the underlying factor, Peyton Thorne, and, you go on social media, I know you've seen it too. That's the first thing that happens anytime that Auburn loses a game. It's, oh, y'all really wanted Peyton Thorne at quarterback, didn't you? But he had the most efficient game passing that he's had in an Auburn uniform. He completed 15 of 19 passes, 75% for over 190 yards. So, I mean, he had a good game. He was running for his life, but he had a good game considering. So, at the end of the day, it's very upsetting. It's very demoralizing, and it just kind of makes you wonder what's next. But at the same time, you got to look at what Jerry Kill and New Mexico State did and just flat out say, hey, that was pretty darn impressive what you were able to do with the small things that you did in the game.
Yeah, and just looking at look, and obviously, I'm going to talk in a little bit with your colleague AJ Spurr on the Roll Tide Wire, and they played Chattanooga, and I think a lot of Auburn fans looked at that and said, okay, that's New Mexico State's our Chattanooga this week. That's not the case. This is a really good team. They're 8-3 coming in, they're 9-3 now. They're going to play for a conference championship. And I don't know the stat, but they have an opportunity this week to get their 10th win. I don't know the last time New Mexico State got 10 wins in a season. So, and like you said, Jerry Kill is a really good football coach. I think we've some people may have forgotten that. The casuals have. He was really good. I mean, he had some health issues, I know, when he was at Minnesota, but really good coach. But still, do you think this was a situation where maybe Auburn went onto the field and say, okay, we should beat this team, we should blow them out, and just figured, okay, us just walking on the field should equal a victory today?
I think it appeared that way from the start because, even going back and listening to what Hugh Freeze said after the game, he said it just seemed like our receivers were in a fog. We weren't running patterns the way that we should have. We weren't moving as fast as we normally should have. So kind of makes me feel like it was in a way. And Jerry Kill also completely destroyed Hugh Freeze last season, if you can remember. And I'm starting to beginning to think that it wasn't Hugh Freeze looking forward to the Auburn job, as a lot of people thought. Because if you remember that whole thing going on, he had the big win over Arkansas, and everybody was like, "Hey, all right, Hugh Freeze, he might be up for a big job." And then the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think UConn beat him somewhere in there too. It just, he had 2 losses at the end that just made no sense. I think Jerry Kill may know something on Hugh Freeze, or maybe Hugh Freeze just isn't spending enough time learning how to stop Jerry Kill. It's I feel like a handful of factors were on that, but it just didn't look like they were playing up to the 3-game winning streak that they had just had. You would think if they had had the same energy, even half the energy, I think they played against Arkansas the week before, then this should have been, a 66-10 game like the Alabama-Chattanooga game was. But it just didn't seem like they weren't in Jordan-Hare Stadium, even though their bodies were.
Yeah, and obviously too could be looking ahead to Alabama, the Iron Bowl. I mean, everybody was because after Auburn beats Arkansas 48-10, everybody's already talking about the Iron Bowl. I mean, you see any Auburn fan. I mean, I get it. You look at New Mexico State previous history. I think a lot of people weren't looking at their record and what they had done this year too, and that was another thing too. The conversation was already on the Iron Bowl, and the coaches and especially the players can say they don't pay attention to that. We know they pay attention to that. They hear that too as well. So I kind of wonder if that kind of got in their head. And you're right. I looked at the stats. Peyton Thorne had more rush attempts than Jarquez Hunter. And Peyton Thorne.
Yeah, Hunter had less than 10, right? I think he maybe had like 8 or 9.
Yeah, he had very few. I got the stat here. Peyton Thorne had 17 carries for 38 yards, and Jarquez Hunter had 8 carries for 27 yards. So, and the way Jarquez has been playing during the streak, too. I mean, he's been playing his best ball, explosive plays. We finally been seeing the Jarquez Hunter we're used to seeing. I mean, I know Peyton Thorne has played better since he's been the full-time quarterback. Last time I had you on, I believe it was when Auburn was 3-4 after the Ole Miss game. And we talked about, hey, they have a shot here to win 4 in a row. We thought the Arkansas game was going to be the toughest game of that set going to Fayetteville. That turned out to be, on paper, the way the score looked, the easiest, and then New Mexico State the hardest. But let's just switch gears into the Iron Bowl. Going into this game, I think a lot of people, like we said, going before this past weekend, Auburn was in a good spot. Take care of business against New Mexico State. You got momentum going in. Does this loss now kind of take away a little bit of the Iron Bowl away from you, in your opinion? Just kind of the expectation of the game?
Not yet. It hasn't. The reason that I say that is because looking back at the Arkansas game and everybody talking about, Arkansas is going to win. Like, I think all the sports books had Arkansas either winning the game or Auburn is like maybe a 2.5 point favorite. And I was like, I don't get it. I feel like Auburn is going to win this game easily by 10. Like, I just had a feeling that Auburn was going to win this game by 10. And then last week with New Mexico State, I didn't think New Mexico State was going to win, but I had certain thoughts during the week where I'm like, there's no way. Like, I would just be driving down the road, coming home from work or whatever, and just like, there's no way New Mexico State's going to beat Auburn. There's no way. But when you look at things, they're like, things may if Auburn doesn't, I think the biggest thing last week was Diego Pavia had injured his hamstring the week before against Western Kentucky. And I was like, if he ends up not playing game, then just, go ahead and give Auburn the win. But if he plays, then I was in denial with myself. I was like, there's no way. But this week, I'm not ready to say that Auburn is out of contention early. A lot of my mind goes back to wild things happen in Jordan-Hare. I mean, heck, we saw that last week, that wild things happen in Jordan-Hare, and Alabama is on the outside looking in for a college playoff berth. And if anything wild's going to happen, it could happen next week. So I'm not ready to say that Auburn's going to win the game, but I'm saying things may get a little crazy and things may be a little bit closer than you think.
Yeah, you got to think Hugh Freeze is going to get their attention this week. What happened? And another thing, what we talked about. Look, and it's not a disrespect against New Mexico State. They outplayed Auburn. They dominated Auburn. Again, like I said, top. There's no fluke there. But at the same time, like you said, looked like Auburn was looking ahead, not focusing on New Mexico State. More worried about, again, we should blow this team out, and Alabama's coming up. Alabama's going to have their full focus this weekend. They're going to want to knock Alabama off. This is the Iron Bowl. The crowd's going to be electric. We've seen Auburn with lesser teams compete in this game. I mean, just remember a couple of years ago, Brian Harsin. I know we're not supposed to say his name around Auburn people, but Brian Harsin, the first year. Look, we all know that team wasn't great because T.J. Finley was the quarterback. Bo Nix was, in because of the, was out because of the injury. Tank Bigsby doesn't run out of bounds. Auburn wins that game. I mean, that's the simple thing. So that stadium does have magical powers. And look, we got to also look at it. I think we need to look at how Auburn was playing before New Mexico State. Hugh Freeze knows how to coach. And look back at Georgia. I mean, Auburn's playing better these last 3 games before New Mexico State than they were when they played Georgia. And they made that a game. So I feel like Hugh Freeze just is going to go into the thing. He's going to know ways to kind of make this a game. And Alabama at times has shown some weaknesses defensively. Now they're overall pretty good, but they've shown some things I think Auburn can exploit. What's going to be the key for Auburn, in your opinion, keeping the game close and making it a 4-quarter game?
One of the big things I've noticed in the close Auburn games, and also even the ones that they won, thinking back to the 2019 game, I think you just got to find ways to, get Peyton and Jarquez up to their full potential. You've got to get Elijah McAllister. You've got to get Jalen McLeod. You've got to get Marcus Harris. All 3 of those guys up and running. Jalen Simpson, DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett, they've all got to be, doing what they do. And if you do that, I think the other thing is you've got to find a way to play mind games with Nick Saban. Because what was the big thing in 2019, if you can remember, that ultimately won Auburn the game? They were trying to do the fake punt, and they were trying to switch personnel. Bo Nix comes back on the field. They've got too many men on the field. Auburn ends up getting a first down. So just try to find small, subtle ways to play mind games with Nick Saban in Alabama. Have all of your main guys get up and ready. Maybe the offensive line gets an extra boost as well. If all of those things go right, I think that's the best chance for Auburn to win.
Another thing too, obviously the Jalen Milroe part of it, containing him and what he's done. Not much against Chattanooga. I mean, Alabama just got him in, got him out. I mean, he did have some touchdowns in that one, but what he did against LSU, what he did against Kentucky, feature him more in the run game. And obviously the deep ball. And you mentioned the defensive backs at Auburn. They're going to have to really play on top of their game because those receivers get behind you. We've seen what they can do when they do that. But I will say this for Auburn. Jalen Milroe will give you opportunities for interceptions. And Auburn's good at that. Jalen Simpson is one of the best in the SEC at picking the quarterback off. And they've got other guys that can do that. And again, you talk about the pass rush wasn't there. Auburn needs to get that going because it pretty much feels like a guarantee Alabama's going to give up 4 or 5 sacks. So there's opportunities to stop them. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on those things? I mean, especially the Jalen Milroe part of it, just containing him. You're probably not going to stop all the explosive plays, but just containing him enough, where it's not too much on the Alabama side.
I've been really high on Marcus Harris all season long, and I think this is probably a really good opportunity for him to have his best game in an Auburn uniform because he has really been the anchor of that defensive line. He has been truly impressive week in and week out, and he is definitely going to have to be the guy if that does happen. I think it is possible. I think Marcus Harris is capable of doing that. And that's going to be the guy, especially on the front seven, that I'm looking forward to really have the most impact. Is you've got to figure out where Marcus Harris is, no matter where you're at. And Marcus Harris has got to have a keen eye, maybe tunnel vision, that if you will, to just like stay locked on to Jalen Milroe and give him fits all day. And I think if that ends up working out well, then things will really have to, or if that happens, maybe don't allow Nick Saban to make those adjustments at halftime. Don't, go full-fledged too early, because he's really good at second half adjustments as well. So maybe slowly get into that second half, really get into his grill, and Auburn has a shot.
Yeah, Alabama have been really good in the second half of games this year. That's kind of another been a thing with them too. Teams have got leads on them in the first half, but Alabama's adjusted in the second half. So as we close up this part, the Auburn part here, Taylor, what happens on Saturday? What's your thoughts?
I think it's going to be another classic SEC on CBS game at the Iron Bowl. I mean, I think it was the 2017 season, I believe, that was it was 2016 was the Vern Lundquist final year. But just think of some of the great games, Iron Bowl games that he got to call. And this is going to be the last one that we'll see on CBS for the rest of our lives, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler a really good one to call. I'm looking for Auburn keeping it a lot closer than a lot of people are thinking, especially after the New Mexico State game. I do see Alabama ultimately pulling it out in the fourth quarter. They get one big play, or they kind of wear Auburn down to the point to where they can't cover them anymore. We've seen Nick Saban do that a handful of times. So I do see Alabama, unfortunately, getting the win. But Auburn's going to give them everything they have. And I think Auburn fans at the end of the day will be really proud at what they see out of their team.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be good. I think it's not going to be the same Auburn team we saw this Saturday. They're going to come, like we said, and have the focus. So it's going to be fun. Iron Bowl week is always fun. After we done stuffed our stomachs and everything with turkey and ham and all the good stuff. But it's going to be fun on Saturday. And this is always fun having you on, Taylor. And let everybody know, the viewers and listeners, where can they find you, and where can they check out the Auburn Wire?
We got a lot of Iron Bowl content pumping out this week. Also, Auburn basketball is off to a really great start. So if you're looking for some Auburn basketball news, check us out over there too. It's at auburnwire.usatoday.com. If you're looking for us on social media, on Facebook, it's Auburn Wire. On X, formerly Twitter, it is at the Auburn Wire. Give us a follow. Of course, the two big things we're doing fan interaction wise is we're doing Tigers of the Game. So after Auburn plays Alabama A&M this week, and also after Auburn plays Alabama this week, head on over to our Twitter page and vote for who you think had the best performance out of every Auburn player. And of course, you'll have a say in the vote, and it'll go out on our website as well. So again, auburnwire.usatoday.com. Also follow us on social media at the Auburn Wire.
All right, everybody, go check Taylor out. Go check out the Auburn Wire. And Taylor, appreciate the time, and look forward to doing some good down the road. We'll have to talk some hoops next time.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully you and your family have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you down the road.
All right, you too, Taylor. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break for some promo stuff here at Digio Strategies. But when we return, I'll be joined by the site editor of the Roll Tide Wire, AJ Spurr.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows, like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits, 106.7 KMX, Today's Country 95.5 WTVY and Music 107.7 Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
Welcome back into Wiregrass Daily News Sports, and join me on the phone right now to preview the Alabama side of the Iron Bowl is AJ Spurr. He is the site's editor over at Roll Tide Wire. And AJ, I appreciate you taking out time and coming on the show today.
As always, thanks for having me on. And it's only right to have the home team on first there, and then bring in the Tide to close out the Iron Bowl coverage. But as always, thank you so much for having me.
I'm sure anybody that listens to this is already going to automatically think I'm showing any kind of favoritism. It's just like if I'd had you on first and then Taylor second, and say, "Oh, you're favoring Alabama." You know how this rivalry works, so it's probably one of them things you can't win for anything on that. But yeah, it's always great talking to you. I always enjoy our chats about Alabama.
Oh, absolutely. And look, that's the nature of the beast when it comes to the rich history of the Iron Bowl. It runs deep and it goes beyond the football field. So with you covering it now and having both Alabama and Auburn reporters to talk about it, you are now ingrained in, part of that rivalry. So it's part of the problem, part of the rivalry.
Absolutely. So we're not going to spend too much time on Alabama's game from Saturday against Chattanooga, where they won 66-10. But just for you, anything that really stood out to you about the game?
Well, as silly as this may sound, considering how deep we are into the season and how realistically there's a chance Alabama has only 3 more games left, the thing that stood out to me about Alabama the most against, FCS opponent Chattanooga was how deep this team really is. At the beginning of the season, rightfully so, a lot of people felt like the starters on this Alabama team might not be worthy of starting for this team and likely wouldn't be starters for contenders elsewhere, which is not what Alabama fans are used to. They're used to having a team 2-3 players deep on the depth chart at every single position that could start elsewhere in the SEC or other Power 5 programs. As the season's gone on, we've seen mostly the offense develop. Tommy Rees as a play caller has matured. We see Jalen Milroe getting a lot more confident. But what we haven't seen, which we have seen in years past, are the second string guys, the third string guys, the players that usually come in late in the game, close things out when there really is no risk of giving up a massive lead, because that's just what Alabama has been over the past few years. This season, it's been a little bit different because with an early season loss and a couple of close games late, Alabama and Nick Saban have really had to keep starters in for a full 4 quarters, whereas in this game, we got to see a lot of Ty Simpson. We got to see a lot of, running backs. Justice Haynes had 5 carries, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns. These are players that I think Alabama fans should be excited about in the near future, but it's also good to know that they're available now if need be, and that the game won't go, all the way down south if the absolute worst were to happen, which you never hope actually occurs, but it's football. We just saw what happened with Jordan Travis 2 days ago. Things happen. Freak accidents happen constantly. So my biggest takeaway from this was Alabama is deep, and Alabama seems primed not just at the guys on top of the depth chart, but below the depth chart. They're willing and able to come in to perform and do what they have to do if called upon.
Yeah, and I want to mention one of them players that I think I was interested in, and I saw Kool-Aid McKinstry was pulled from the punt return, and then you put in Caleb Downs. He had the 85-yard punt return touchdown, obviously, and this is a great player, young player, a 4th in the SEC in tackles with 90. Just kind of your thoughts, maybe featuring him more in that punt return role versus what they've been doing with Kool-Aid.
Look, Kool-Aid McKinstry is one of those electric players that you never know what's going to happen when you put the ball in his hand. And on defense, you don't really get to see that all too often. So having him on punt returns, I think is or was maybe at this point something that fans really liked to see. But if you're Nick Saban, you're not out there trying to put on a spectacle for fans. You're not trying to entertain people. You're out there trying to win football games. And compared to what we saw from Caleb Downs, he might be the more sure-handed returner. And you're not going to have one set guy out there every single time, although that would be ideal. Sometimes you're going to have to switch it up. If somebody's, having an off day, they're not fielding the ball well, it is what it is. That could be what's been happening with Kool-Aid, just maybe a couple off days in terms of returning kicks and punts. But from what we saw from Caleb Downs, he's electric, when he's on the field on defense and on special teams. You got to ride the hot hand, and especially going into a game like this and Georgia coming up in the SEC championship, he might be someone to keep an eye on as the go-to guy now for returns.
And you mentioned it. Let's jump into the Iron Bowl. And, just going in, and I asked you on last week, and then I messaged Taylor as well to come on the show to talk about the Auburn side of things. I saw this as a situation where, okay, Auburn's playing New Mexico State. They should be coming 7-4, 4 straight wins, a lot of energy, a lot of momentum. It's in Jordan-Hare. We know how that place is. Auburn's won a lot of games in that stadium. Maybe they had no business winning. And I want to get somebody from the Alabama side perspective on this. Now, Auburn coming into this game after losing to New Mexico State. How do you see that loss for Auburn on the Alabama side of things?
Look, if you're an Alabama fan and you're looking at this loss that Auburn just had, an embarrassing blowout loss, not to rub it in or anything, but it can't mean much. This is a rivalry game on the road at Jordan-Hare, which if you're an Alabama fan, anything can happen. I saw a bunch of tweets that were absolutely hilarious saying Auburn just got blown out by New Mexico State. Now they're going to go out there and play like the 1972 Dolphins for the first half of the Iron Bowl. And really, it's true. You have a coach that knows what it takes to beat Nick Saban because he had done so years before in consecutive seasons while he was at Ole Miss. You have a team that is talented, though hasn't been able to string together solid outings here late in the season. And overall, you cannot underestimate the impact this game has with it being in Auburn. All right, the fans play a massive role. People talk about Jordan-Hare being one of the most daunting environments in all of college football. So when you look at what happened against New Mexico State, you can nitpick and you can dig into stats and you can say, well, here's what New Mexico State did that, made Auburn tick. This is, what they didn't see coming. This is what they prepared for versus what New Mexico State actually did. And you can get into the X's and O's, and I think that that's great. But in my opinion, most of that goes out the window when you're looking at a huge rivalry game like this. And I think the same goes not just for the Iron Bowl. You look at the game, the Red River rivalry. Some of these games where there's such a rich history and just a strong distaste for, the other team, nothing matters. They might as well be 0-0, both teams. This could be the first game of the season because Auburn right now knows that Alabama is playing to advance their interests as it relates to the college football playoff. And Auburn right now, this is their season. Sure, they're going to get a bowl game, but their season will be made regardless if they beat Alabama. So while, the Tigers are trying to play spoiler here, it's Nick Saban and the Tide that has to come in, remain focused, and play Auburn as if this is, part one of the SEC championship. Every game since Texas basically has been a playoff game. So this, even more so than all those preceding, Alabama has to show up, ignore what just happened against New Mexico State. You mentioned rat poison earlier. You don't want this to turn into rat poison for Alabama walking into Jordan-Hare thinking they've got this in the bag, because that's exactly what Auburn wants. And I know that Auburn didn't do this on purpose, for the sake of having Alabama walk in unsuspecting of a angry 6-5 Auburn team. But, it's on Alabama to stay focused. And at the same time, it's on Auburn to regroup after such a devastating loss and try to spoil what's left of Alabama's season as the postseason nears.
And just look at the matchups. X's and O's, offense versus defense. I think, and obviously as someone that watches every Auburn game, I think defensively before New Mexico State, that's been a strength of this team this year. Again, well, LSU lit them up, but look, LSU's done that to everybody, so I don't even think you can even knock that against Auburn or any team that played LSU, knowing what they've done against every team they have faced this year. But Auburn's defense, especially their starting 11, I think they have a solid starting 11 team. The depth is an issue with that team. Usually about the middle of the third quarter when the play number gets high, they kind of start to wear down. But when you look at Alabama's offense versus the Auburn defense, what do you see with that matchup, particularly on Alabama's side of things?
Well, look, it's going to come down to Jalen Milroe, and I really want to see this passing game come alive against Auburn. We've seen in the past, even looking to the past few years, going back to Mac Jones in what was that, 2019. All right, he threw 2 pick sixes. Bryce Young 2 years ago in that 4 OT game, he didn't look great in that one. Auburn's defense really stepped up. Jalen Milroe here is fighting a stigma that Alabama quarterbacks really don't perform well on the road in the Iron Bowl. So with the wide receiving unit that he has this year, which is really highlighted by Jermaine Burton, which Alabama fans have grown to absolutely love. However, he doesn't have that flashy star quality that the rest of the nation has now affiliated with Alabama. So as Alabama's offensive line continues to improve, which is silly to say in the final game of the regular season, the running game improves with it. However, in this one, I would really like to see Jalen Milroe open up as a passer, have Tommy Rees really show what Jalen Milroe is capable of before heading into this SEC championship game, which I don't try to say as rat poison to have this team looking ahead to, but as the season rounds up, you need to know what Jalen Milroe can and cannot do, especially in an environment like Auburn with the wide receivers that he does have, and sometimes the very limited time that he has in the pocket. We've seen Jalen Milroe become a lot more confident as a pocket passer. So in this one, in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, I'm really, really looking at Jalen Milroe here to step up and try his best to torch this Auburn secondary.
When you look at the Auburn secondary, I know coming into the year, that was actually one of the probably most experienced part of this defense. Jalen Simpson is tied for second in the SEC with 4 interceptions. DJ James has played well. I mean, they got some good players on that side. So that really could be like a huge chess match between the two, the Auburn secondary versus those Alabama wide receivers.
Big time. And we haven't, I alluded to this a second ago with Jermaine Burton being, the go-to number one guy. One of the things we did see against Chattanooga for Alabama were some of these receivers that maybe haven't gotten as much action in earlier games. It kind of seems like in every single game, Jalen Milroe has that one target that he likes to go to. And then beyond that, it's few and far between as to if you can pick a, wide receiver 2 on the offense any given week. So against Chattanooga, sure, we saw Jermaine Burton have 3 receptions for over 100 yards and a touchdown, but we saw him spread the ball out a ton. We saw Kendrick Law with 32 yards, Jalen Hale 29, Nye Black with 24, Bond 23, and Malik Benson with 23. All right, that, if you're an Alabama fan, that is perfect. That's what you want to see. With this Auburn secondary, you can't let them, it's a meme, but you don't want to let them know your next move. You don't want them to know, okay, if Jermaine Burton's unavailable, who's the next guy that Jalen Milroe looks to? And what we saw last week was Milroe really is comfortable moving the ball around, spreading it out. And against Auburn, this is going to be key, because if you're going to look to attack through the air, that passing game's got to be loaded up. And if Jermaine Burton is who Auburn secondary focuses on, who's that next guy up? Or who are the next few guys up? And, that's really what I would like to see coming into this game.
And flipping around, the Auburn offense versus Alabama's defense. Of course, Auburn has played better offensively since they went with one quarterback in Peyton Thorne, and Jarquez Hunter before the New Mexico State game was really playing really well. He's been playing the best he had all year. Auburn's got question receivers. They don't have the greatest receiving core in the SEC. Everybody knows that. Peyton Thorne is dangers in the quarterback run game. But when you look at the Alabama defense going against the Auburn offense, what are you seeing there?
You just alluded to it. It's got to be making sure Peyton Thorne doesn't flush out of that pocket and do damage with his legs. Look, we talk about Caleb Downs, Kool-Aid McKinstry. We didn't mention Malachi Moore. This Alabama secondary is great. All right, I don't know if I would call it an elite secondary. Maybe in the SEC it is. Nationally, I'm not sure where it would rank. But the secondary is not a matter of concern for Alabama. The issue is up front and containing the quarterback. And Peyton Thorne having the ability, maybe not as much as somebody like Jaden Daniels, but having that ability to run away from any sort of pressure that he feels if he needs to is a huge consideration for Alabama coming into this game, because now you're not just focused on the run game, the passing game, moving back and forth. Now you might have to have a spy on Peyton Thorne, which detracts from, stopping the run, which takes away from, a linebacker possibly dropping back in coverage if they need him to. So if I'm Kevin Steele, my number one priority right now is making sure Peyton Thorne doesn't do what Alabama really hasn't been able to do much all season, and that's stop the quarterback from leaving the pocket and getting positive yardage.
Yeah, you mentioned Kevin Steele. That's another storyline with this game. He used to he's bounced back and forth between these two teams, which he did a great job when he was defensive coordinator at Auburn. I'll be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of Kevin Steele because I do think there was some kind of like backdoor politicking to get rid of Gus, and he wanted to become the head coach when Brian Harsin was the head coach. Everybody, I think a lot of people probably listening to this knows about that AL.com article that came out a few years ago about that, but we're not here to talk about that. I just been saying though, the storyline with Kevin Steele was at Alabama, went to Auburn, back at Alabama. That's kind of another interesting subplot of this game on Saturday.
That's just, look, we talked about it earlier. This is one of those things. This rivalry runs deep. It's not just the players on the field at that time. It's players of years past. It's generations of fans. It's coaches that have flip-flopped. It's great to see, and this is why, myself included, many people feel like college football is the greatest sport. It's games like the Iron Bowl and everything about it that makes it great that puts college football ahead of every other sport in so many people's minds.
Yeah, you don't get this on the NFL on Sundays, these rivalry games. I mean, you just don't get this. It's just not there. So close it up. We've broke down the matchups, offense, defense on both sides. How do you see Saturday going?
Well, look, I mentioned the memes about Auburn coming out like the 72 Dolphins or the 85 Bears. I do think Auburn comes out swinging. I think Auburn puts up some points. I think they'll be able to put up somewhere around 24 would be my guess for Auburn. However, for Alabama, I'm going to go ahead and say, oh gosh, give me 38 for Alabama, 24 Auburn. So 2-touchdown game.
I think a lot of people are going to see it that way, which everybody, I'm not giving my pick until me and Matt Lowe do our thing later on in the week, so I can hold off on that. But I could, that's kind of probably, I think, going to be a consensus for a lot of people with this game. So it's going to be fun. It's always, Iron Bowl week is always fun after we done had our fill of turkey and dressing and all that good stuff on Thursday and on Friday too, the leftovers. Then we get ready for the Iron Bowl on Saturday. But AJ, it's been fun having you on, talking about the Alabama side of the rivalry of the game for Saturday. If the listeners and viewers want to check out online, where can they find you, and where can they find Roll Tide Wire?
Well, if hearing any more of me at Spurr FM, that's SPURR FM, like the radio dial, and then Roll Tide Wire is rolltidewire.usatoday.com, and we're covering all things Crimson Tide football as the postseason comes up, and with basketball underway, we are also covering Tide hoops.
All right, everybody, go check out AJ and go check out Roll Tide Wire. And AJ, we'll have to have you on also to talk some hoops down the road with that going full force with football season winding down. But I always appreciate you coming on the show, and I look forward to doing some time down the road.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you so much. As always, I appreciate it.
Everybody, that's going to do it for our Iron Bowl preview here on Wiregrass Daily News Sports. Thanks again to Taylor Jones and AJ Spurr, both from USA Today. Of course, Taylor Jones with the Auburn Wire and AJ Spurr, as you just heard, with the Roll Tide Wire. Appreciate them coming on the show and previewing both sides of the greatest rivalry in college sports. And that's going to do it for today's show. We will be back Wednesday evening. We'll be dropping a brand new episode. You're not going to wait till Friday. Obviously not Thursday, Thanksgiving. Me and Matt Lowe will preview rivalry weekend and give all our picks for the Thanksgiving weekend. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a little prime time podcasting there between me and Matt. That will come your way Wednesday evening. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. You can email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com and read all my written work over at Last Word on college football. Everybody has a great Tuesday. Talk to you Wednesday evening when me and Matt Lowe preview the last week of the regular season of college football. Till next time, bye-bye.